Recognizing failure patterns is the closest thing an innovator has to seeing the future. If you can recognize the patterns, you can change the future because most failures are not original, they repeat. And that repetition is the pattern. The same handful of patterns reappearing in one organization after another, decade after decade. Now, this one I'm going to share with you stings a little. In 2011, Bill Geiser told me almost word for word how the project we had spent the past 2 years building was going to fail. He saw the pattern before I did. I heard him say it, and I never forgot it. That the failure still happened. This is not a pre-mortem. A pre-mortem imagines new ways your plan could fail. Recognizing failure patterns means learning from failures that have already happened elsewhere and spotting the early weak signals before you repeat them while you still have time to act. By the end of this episode, you will have 4 patterns in your own library, a 5-minute way to check any project against them, and the 4 steps to take when you find one. Let's get into it. In 2004, Fossil hired a watch technology executive named Bill Geiser to help build innovative technology into their watches. A few years later, he and I started spending real time together. Me as HP's CTO, him running watch technology at Fossil. Now, between us, we had an idea we were both believed in, a connected wearable, years before anybody used that phrase, co-innovated by HP and Fossil, with each bringing its own expertise and resources. Fossil named the resulting platform the MetaWatch. It ran on an ultra-low power processor with a little 96 by 96 pixel display, an accelerometer, and Bluetooth. It was designed to last a week on a charge, and it shipped with a full developer kit so anybody could build apps for it. Now, we revealed the partnership in March of 2011 at an HP event in China. And let me tell you, being the one on stage showing off that device, the press went crazy. Now, the key here is that between us, we had one thing Apple did not have in 2011, and that was not technology, distribution. A lot of people are not aware that HP held roughly 10% of all consumer electronic shelf space worldwide, the largest company controlling consumer electronic retail shelf space. Now, Fossil sold through 20,000 retail stores that carried its watches, and those distributions did not overlap. Now, with that power behind it, we still had a risk, and Bill saw the ending before anyone. And he told me this back in 2011. He said, Phil, I wouldn't be shocked if the Apple evolved the Nano, the ultra small little wearable iPod, to take advantage of this space. They'll legitimize it in the consumer's minds worldwide. So here it was, the man building the watch, spotting the failure in advance out loud, and naming it changed nothing. The signs kept arriving in plain sight. During this time, HP went through 3 CEOs in 13 months. In August 2011, Leo, the CEO at the time, killed HP's consumer mobile technology strategy and WebOS, which removed the platform that made the smartwatch matter to HP at all. Now, when we got back to the early devices, the battery lasted 3 to 4 hours instead of the original design target of a week. We ran month-long approval cycles for changes that startups could have implemented in days, if not hours. Then I went out on medical leave. And when I came back 6 weeks later, HP had killed Palm, killed the WebOS, and the entire connected wearable project. Here is what the original warning turned into. The Apple Watch shipped in April of 2015. It sold 4.2 million units in its first quarter, and by that fall, Apple was selling 3 out of every 4 smartwatches on the planet. The market we walked away from grew from 300,000 units in 2012 to 45 million by 2018, and Apple held 51% of the market share. The idea was never the hard part. It never is. The hard part is committing the time, people, and resources. So, nothing that killed MetaWatch was new, and none of the signals were faint. They were loud. They were ignored, and each one was a pattern that has killed projects across organizations for decades, not even decades, for centuries. Recognizing failure patterns has 2 halves. The first is building a library of how these failures constantly repeat. The second is matching the situation in front of you against those library of failures and forcing what you find into an actual decision while the fix is still cheap. Bill did the first half. Neither of our companies did the second. And the gap between those halves is where Apple Watch came from. So here are the 4 entries for your library, straight just from this one failure. And I'll be using the MetaWatch as the example, but it applies literally to all failures. Each one will end with a test question. And by the end of this episode, you will have a 4-question checklist. And then I will show you what to do when a pattern shows up. So, pattern number 1, success protects itself. Fossil's traditional watch business grew from 950 million in 2004 to 3.25 billion in 2013. It was tripling while we were building the thing that might jeopardize where it was making its money. And that growth made cannibalizing it politically impossible inside of Fossil. Fossil never had to kill the MetaWatch outright. Fossil just positioned it differently. The watch as a $200 development platform, something no ordinary customer would ever be handed at a retail counter. So you take out the MetaWatch distribution channel. When we constrain what we're innovating so it doesn't risk the present, we lost the future. Now test this. Is the new thing that you're working on priced, staffed, or positioned so that it cannot hurt the current thing? If the answer is yes, this pattern is already running. Now let's look at pattern number 2, the warning that changes nothing. Bill's warning was specific and early and exactly right, and it still changed nothing. I heard it directly, and hearing it is not the same as deciding. Nobody reran the plan with, oh, I don't know, Apple arrives and legitimizes the category. Nobody treated that as an input, no roadmap changed, and no budget and resourcing changed. So test this. What decision changed after a warning, after you found a warning? If the honest answer is none, the warning was never acted on, no matter how many people remember hearing it. Hearing the warning, value 0. Using it to make a decision, that's where you can save a project. Pattern number 3, the problem nobody owns. A weak battery life was the MetaWatch's central promise, and it shipped at 3 to 4 hours, not a full week. Both companies saw the gap. No one owned fixing it though. The hardest problem on a project sat at the seam between two companies, and the problems that sit at the seams get reported, get tracked, and carried forward without ever belonging to someone who can be asked why the problem is still there. We ran that partnership for 2 years and never settled whose job it was to lose sleep over the one number that mattered most. So, how do you test it? Who owns the hardest problem? By name, not a team, not an organization, not a group. Who owns the hardest problem? By name. If the answer is a partnership, a committee, or pause, then nobody owns it. That's a problem. Pattern number 4, the pace mismatch. Earlier, I shared that we ran 2-month-long approval cycles for changes that startups could implement in days, if not hours. That is a pacing problem. The organization's internal pace versus the market's pace. A smartwatch in 2011 was a fast moving product running through slow moving machinery, and no amount of talent inside the project could close that gap. The delay was structural, not personal. People were passionate. The organization, the infrastructure of an organization, how decisions were made, that's what was killing it. So, how do you test it? How long does one small change take to approve against how fast the market is moving? Time, a real one. Don't guess, time it. Don't estimate it, and figure that out. Are you mismatched in what you're trying to do? That is going to be a failure for your idea. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to take a little pause. I'm going to think about and apply this not to a true project, right? The 4 patterns, this is just the start of your library. But before you use it, don't use it on a live decision. Test it, or what we call backcasting. When you've got a hypothesis, look backwards. Does it explain things that you've had in your history? So before we use this on a live decision, test it on a dead one that failed on you in the past. You have a dead project in your past. We all do. I've got plenty, which I write about a lot and share with you. But pick one that still stings and give it 5 minutes against the 4 test questions. Question 1, was an existing success being protected while the project starved, whether it be in pricing, staffing, resourcing, positioning? Be honest now. 2, did people raise a warning, and what decision changed after it was said? Did you heed the warning? Those flags popping up as your project is moving. 3, who owned the hardest problem? And can you name that person? And 4, how long did a small change take to approve against how fast the market was moving? When I run the MetaWatch through these 4 questions, I find all 4 patterns. Your project will probably show fewer. Every pattern you find is one you will now recognize, and it happens on the project you are working on right now. Trust me. So now this brings up the harder half of the skill, because recognition alone did not save us. Suppose you'd been standing next to me in 2011 holding all 4 of these patterns. It would not have been enough. Being right about the future means nothing without the organizational machinery to act on that insight. So when a failure pattern appears on a live project, follow this sequence. And this is what I've learned over my 40 years being in the innovation game, is the sequences to really get the change and avoid the failure. Step one, say the failure pattern out loud in the room where the decisions live, not in the hallway afterwards. Use the pattern's name. Step two, get it onto a decision memo, decision email, into the Slack channel, however your organization is making decisions. A warning that lives in a conversation has not happened. Nobody takes the conversation real. Put it in writing. Write the pattern and what it cost into a document that will drive a decision. Step three, attach an owner. If you identify a critical problem, a warning, a failure, something that's got to be solved before something could be a success, assign it to one person, not a team or an organization. Someone you can ask at the next sprint why the problem is still there. Step four, attach a date. You've heard me say this before. Attach dates. That's what drives people's achievements. Being early provides an advantage, and a failure pattern without a date on it fades unnoticed. Bill was right for 4 years, and Apple was the one who acted on it. That could have been us if we'd had the organizational courage to back our vision with meaningful resources. You now have what nobody handed me in 2011: 4 patterns of failure, a 5-minute check, and the 4 steps to run when you spot a failure emerging. What you do in the room where the decision lives is the part Bill's warning never got.